Well, we're getting into the last segment of our call today, and it's really around governance. And I'm going to break it into two components: platform governance, which we'll spend a little bit of time on, just a handful of minutes, and then content governance, which is a big topic for all of you. So I've had whiteboarding sessions with a lot of customers over the years, and a lot of these concepts are based on common practices. You might say some are best practices. A lot are just based on common sense and practical decisions. But when it comes to managing the ServiceNow platform together, just like the question we had, how did you get IT and HR and workplace services and everybody else aligned? The typical scenario is that you have an executive steering board of leaders, business leaders, senior IT or global business service leaders. And their job is usually to make sure that your investments in ServiceNow align with your corporate imperatives and goals, and that you're allocating budget and resources appropriately. Now, the second two areas I often see combined, the second two, there is usually a program manager and process owners. And a lot of what they do is they analyze all of the enhancement requests that are coming from all the different teams who utilize ServiceNow and prioritizing those using a software development lifecycle methodology. So they're saying, okay, we're going to get to this one in this release, we're going to get to this one in this next release. And they're doing so in a way that needs to be very fair and objective. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And then there's the technical folks. Those are the ServiceNow developers and architects. They're the ones who are actually, implementing the new enhancements and configurations or activating plugins that people are requesting because they will actually support one of the business imperatives. And so they've been approved. To bring it down a notch, this is a slide that I've recently updated but been showing for years. I'll start at the bottom. You usually have different lines of business using ServiceNow, and I've shown a couple of here, but it scales infinitely horizontally. So it could be different service departments like legal or workplace services. For example, it could be other lines of business that are using ServiceNow and perhaps creator workflow or custom applications that you've put onto the platform. And those people all are going to have enhancement requests over time. And then you have your ServiceNow platform team. The first customer that shared their model with me, they called it a center of excellence. So I call it the center of excellence, or COE. You are welcome to call it whatever you like. And it's not one size fits all. So you'll say here, I have an IT admin and an HR admin. That's okay. A lot of times the customer just has one admin and they are for both IT and HR. They have both of those roles. Or you might have a small team of people, depending on how prolifically you are utilizing ServiceNow. But this program director is in charge of prioritizing all of the demands, putting them into your software development release cycle, maintaining standards. There's so many opportunities to standardize the way that knowledge articles look, or what a priority one means for an IT incident versus an HR case, so that employees feel less disjointed with their service experiences. They're also focusing on education. They're going to Knowledge Conference. They're attending webinars. They're attending ServiceNow user groups or SNUGs along with these people as well. And they're tracking everything through the progression from development into production and planning your upgrade cycles as well. Now, I mentioned fair and objective. This is a screenshot from ServiceNow's Demand Workbench, which is part of our IT Business Management product suite. And if you're using ServiceNow's IT Product Management Suite or ITBM Suite, great, you can use this. If you're using something else, great, you can use that. But the reason I say it needs to be fair and objective, and by the way, what you're looking at here is all these demand requests that have been ranked and prioritized based on the benefit or value to the organization versus the effort. And we did have a lot of customers in the early days where one team would purchase ServiceNow, and as other teams began to utilize the platform, they felt like the first team kind of had a stranglehold on ServiceNow, and that all of the second and third and fourth teams' enhancement requests were always kind of pushed to the end of the line. And so it is important to make sure that all of these stakeholders who are using ServiceNow can see where their enhancement requests lie in relationship to all of the others. And that's really the best way to do it. And that's why that Center of Excellence team really should be a somewhat independent team. Now, oftentimes it sits within the IT organization, but it's not part of the IT service desk. Those people are too busy putting out fires and keeping the lights on. It needs to be somewhere, maybe say the application development group or department within IT, or the global business services organization. That's often where the platform governance team will live. But these are visualizations. There's even this old timeline view. A lot of people don't even remember this. It came out so long ago. But you can actually scroll in this within ServiceNow. And it's kind of like the opening of every Star Wars movie, where through the 3D visualization, the cards kind of come closer to you as you're getting closer to those dates. This is another great way of allowing people to see, where do my enhancement requests and configurations lie in relationship to all the others. And it's a great visualization for the ServiceNow platform team to see and have some foresight into all the things that they're going to be working on behalf of the rest of everyone else, because they really become a service provider to all of the other teams. Okay. Now, we're not going to get into a ton of detail with that, but I am going to give you access to these slides and, of course, the reporting. And there are ebooks and other resources within our Customer Success Center that can help you with this. And when you come out to that last link to the Customer Success Center, you're going to see all these videos that are available to you on governance, for example. And I really think that governance is important. It is the way that our customers will get the most value out of your investment in ServiceNow, because it's going to allow you to use it most broadly across the organization, and do it so with a lot less friction than if you don't have a good governance plan instantiated. Now we're going to get into content governance. Content governance, I'm going to spend a little bit more time doing that, but I want to level set. There is a lot of different types of content in ServiceNow. There's knowledge content, in other words, knowledge-based articles, and these are often very persistent, right? They are official, they are policies. They have version control, for example, and ownership and a review cycle, and that's great. You also have community content. Community content is user-driven content. This is where people post blogs and videos and upcoming events, and they socially interact with each other. Alex Dickman from HJF, she's still on the call. She was sharing with me recently the different communities at HJF, where they have everything from Ask the CEO, where the CEO will interact with people and they get to ask him questions, to gardening groups, where people are sharing gardening groups. And you'll notice there's this element of gamification because there's a leaderboard. And she said people are quite competitive, trying to gain points by interacting a lot on the communities in a social way, which is great. We're going to spend most of our time talking about the types of content that you get through content publishing and experiences or campaigns. I've listed a few here. There's, I think last I looked, at least 28 different types of content that you may create through content publishing. But that would be the content like the news and banners or upcoming events or videos that go onto the portal pages, the mobile content that go on the mobile app, the types of tasks that you can assign to employees, such as marking something as complete or signing a document, the different types of notifications that you can put into ServiceNow or project externally into other platforms like Microsoft Teams or Facebook Workplace. So how do we govern this type of content? You know, Anne certainly gave some good ways that they do it at Trivium Packaging. And again, this is conceptual in the sense that this is not one size fits all. You have to make it work for your organization based on how many people you have, based on how you're organized. You know, if you're a small organization, you're quite lucky in that simplifies things for you. If you're a large multinational corporation with a lot of brands, you know, I mentioned Paramount had 20 different brands, Disney, I think, had 12, then it's going to get a little bit more complicated, but that's okay. Starting at the bottom of, again, you're going to have different teams. I've represented two. This could scale horizontally. And these teams can still manage all of the content that's in their knowledge bases, in their catalogs, for example, and our taxonomy is going to do the job of organizing that in a consistent, logical, intuitive way for employees to find on the portal, for example. IT might also be using our communities to do some crowdsourcing where people are answering each other's technical questions. Okay, and HR is going to be very similar in the same way, where you have subject matter experts that are ensuring that your policies are actually accurate. Now, Pooja also mentioned we provide abilities to delegate out the ownership of different topic pages. So on the IT side, you might have people that are managing the content, the announcements, the videos, the upcoming events for pages related to, software or IT, hardware, for example. HR might have ones for career development or benefits or payroll. And those people can still control the information, the content on their pages. Now, it's okay if you still have some approval process for that. You don't want Sally, updating all the information on her page on a whim on a Tuesday morning necessarily. So you can still use workflow to make sure that there's an approval process there. And we'll talk about that just a little bit on the next slide, because there are some things, more urgent communications, maybe you don't want any type of approval process. You just want it to go out as quickly as possible. But what I see here is a lot of times you'll have a content delivery team, and that's often part of the corporate communications team as well. And they may have different groups of content managers. And so what we allow you to do is group these content managers. So one person could be a member of multiple groups, and then you can put in place different parameters and limitations and structures for the types of content that they can publish and what audiences they have available to them. And that's something I'll have on my next slide as well. But this team has great opportunity to create standards and templates for things like knowledge articles so they're consistent. They're the ones who are publishing a lot of the content and approving content, especially to the landing page, right? Everybody always asks me, well, who gets to publish content to the landing page? Typically, it's the corporate communications team. But remember, these teams have their own pages too. There is a top-level HR page, a top-level IT page. So it's not like they're losing control if you want to give them access to post content on their pages as well. This is the team that's fulfilling content requests. Pooja alluded to content governance, where lines of business department heads, others can request content. This team responds to those and curates it for them. And of course, this team should be the one. You need to have somebody who's actually monitoring all of the ratings and feedback and the success of your campaigns and the user experience analytics and the interactions happening in the employee communities. If you don't have anyone monitoring that, you'll never be able to improve the communications experience. And it's sadly, I do still see some customers that, they might have rolled ServiceNow years ago, and they don't have any knowledge manager who's really looking at the employee feedback. There's such an opportunity to make sure that employees are receiving what they want and that it's efficient and accurate. So let's talk a little bit more about content governance. Now, it's all of these things. It's the ability to submit and fulfill requests, the ability to review and approve content, the ability to restrict publishing. We'll talk about this a fair amount on the next slide. You may have different groups of content managers. They may have different areas or jurisdictions because you've delegated out different areas of the portal or types of content to them. And you'll have to put in place some restrictions because you don't necessarily want every single person to be able to publish any type of content to any audience on any page. So let's talk about that for a moment. Again, this is conceptual. It's based on the conversations I have had with many, many customers. And just to break this down for you, a lot of the content management groups are based on either the area of the business. It could be companies. If you have a large company that's acquired other companies, it could be business units. Or a lot of times it can be also by geography, by country, for example. And so this particular matrix has a mixture of that. You have some content managers that are for the US, some that are for the UK. You have the corporate communications content managers. You might have people that are just in charge of a particular store or plant or hospital based on your particular industry, right? And then you have people that have been given access to control the content on their particular topic page or microsite. And so conceptually, what I see customers doing, and you could even do this in a spreadsheet to start off with, is to say, okay, well, what types of content can this group publish? Where can they publish it to? And which audiences do they have access to? So again, I'll show you in a moment how you can restrict the audiences based on the content management groups. And then, of course, what workflows are going to apply? For those of you that are familiar with ServiceNow, you can set up workflows or you can set up other flows that are basically triggered. And so I've also added a category here of the class of the communication. It could be, well, which group is publishing it? Maybe one group is not as good as another. And so they need an extra level of review and approval than the corporate communications people. It could be as sophisticated as looking at the aggregate number of people in all the audience that they've selected. So you could say, hey, if this communication is going to be seen by less than 1,000 people, we're going to get one level of approval. But when it gets above 1,000, we're going to get 2 levels of approval for that. You could also say, maybe some content is sensitive. Let's say your company goes out and acquires another company. And so you're drafting up the announcement for there. Well, you can restrict that and mark it sensitive. And that could also be a flag in the workflow that you want somebody in legal to review and approve that before you're able to actually publish it on the day that you make that information publicly accessible. So you can use the flow designer or the workflow engine to create all the conditions that you want for your review and approval. But let's talk about how you put in place some of these restrictions. Within ServiceNow, you have a couple of different roles. You have the content administrator role, and that person is actually in charge of setting up the parameters and limitations and review processes for all of the content managers. So the content manager is the other role. And as I mentioned, you could have lots of content managers. I recommend putting them into different groups. So one person could be a member of multiple groups. And then for those groups, you're going to limit them. And right now you can limit them by which audiences they can access, which topics they can influence, which pages they can put content on, or specific content items. And by that, I mean not a content item type like a banner, but a specific piece of content. And that's where if it's very sensitive, for example, you may not want other content managers seeing it before it's being published. So you can restrict access to a single person or maybe a single person plus a couple of collaborators. And they're the only ones that can see that particular piece of content before it goes out. To do that, in the navigation pane under content publishing and the advanced subtopic in the navigation pane, you will see some properties. And you're going to want to check yes for all these properties so that you can put in place those restrictions or parameters. Once you do that, then you're going to be able to go into various items like the audiences, and you're going to be able to say, restrict this to these particular groups. So only the groups that you list here would have access to this particular audience. And so you'll do that for all of your audiences. Now, right now, it requires you to go into each audience or each topic or each page and set that up. And we recognize that that's a bit of work, right, to go through and do that, especially if you're a large organization. Again, smaller, simpler organizations it's going to be quite a bit simpler for them. But what I've been talking to Corey about is to have a content management console or content management center, which could be a lot like this dashboard. By the way, this dashboard is not out of the box. The lady, Allison Ridgway, who put this together for me, had never put together a dashboard before. And I think it took her about 30 minutes to figure out how to do this. But you can have, or the vision that we're talking about is that you would have one pane of glass where you could see all of your different content management groups. You could see all of the content that they're working on. You could see the state of the content they're working on. Is it a work in progress? Is it going to be published in the next 7 days? Is it expired? Are there any approvals that are out there that are in danger of being missed? So you could focus in your attention on that. But more importantly, as you drill into these groups or hover over these groups, you'll see, what parameters are in place or what workflows are applied to the work that they do. And so hopefully we'll get to a point where you have all kinds of insight into your operations, your different content management groups, and the different parameters and workflows and restrictions that you have put in place. And of course, as you are using the content requests rather than just emails with people requesting content, you'll be able to see what each person in the group is working on. You can have calendar reports to see the flow or the scheduling of content as it's about to come out. And all of this will help you make sure that you have all the proper quality checks in place as well.